Hello, my friend. I'm Mike, the book guy, and I'm here to introduce you today to The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is an amazing series, and I'm here today to pitch it to you to help you know if this is something that you're actually going to enjoy. So I'm not just pitching my favorite books, it's about helping you find something to read. So I avoid all spoilers, I use simple terms, and I try to be as objective and unbiased as possible. That said, you should know up front, I love this series, okay? I pretty much adore Robin Hobb and worship at the altar to her magnificent godlike genius, so that means I'm going to be a little bit more biased than normal, okay? So I'll try to remember to point out the flaws as well, whatever they may be, if they hypothetically... Anyway, let's go. The concept of the series is about Fitz. Fitz is a young boy who finds out he is the bastard child of the royal family, the Farseers. Now, a royal bastard is a threat to the throne. However, the king decides, rather than killing him off in secret to protect the lineage, he will actually show mercy and appoint Fitz to be the royal assassin. So Fitz is trained to serve the family that he can never be a part of and remove their enemies for them. However, Fitz is also hiding a secret. He has dark magic. Inherited from his unclear parentage, it's a magic that has long been outlawed in the Six Duchies. He must hide his magic from his own masters and family because they are the same people who would destroy him for it, because only the Farseers are allowed magic. Oh, so good. First thing you should know about this series, it's split into trilogies that are only loosely connected. Let me explain. The first trilogy is the Farseer trilogy, and it's focused around Fitz. He's the royal assassin. It covers the war with the red ships, the political maneuverings for the throne, and a coterie of evil magicians. God, I love this series. Oh, all of this takes place in the Six Duchies. Now, the next trilogy is the live ship traders and actually takes place in a different country known as Bingtown. So it's a very different part of the same world. So there are only a few loose details that connect them at this stage. Yet they are more linked than you might realize at first. So overall, there are actually 5 series within this series. So they make up 4 trilogies and 1 quadrilogy. The 4th one is the quad. So 4 with the 4th, you get it. So the first trilogy focuses on Fitz as he's a young man learning to be the royal assassin, and then the second trilogy goes to the ship traders in Bingtown. The third trilogy goes back to Fitz, but it's about 15-20 years later when he's in his 30s. The 4th series will go back to Bingtown again, so the 2nd and the 4th are linked. But those have a mostly new set of characters, even if it's the same location. And of course, the final trilogy is Fitz again, this time another 15 to 20 years later when he's in his 50s and 60s. So those 3 trilogies, 1, 3, and 5, actually are all about Fitz and the Six Duchies at different periods of life. So you kind of track the same stories. The common question is reading order. Now, I wholeheartedly believe you can read these in any order, but you should read them based in the same location. So you should read either the 3 Fitz series or the 2 Bingtown series. You shouldn't read them out of order, then it'd get a little bit weird. If you do choose to read the trilogies out of order with each other, there are 2 little warnings I've got for you, just so you know. The first one, each trilogy will end with a rather climactic big event. Okay, and then the next trilogy, even though it's in a different country, will refer to that event. Kind of like letting you know where they sit in timeline to each other, but that can be a bit of a spoiler. So for example, the 3rd book of the first trilogy is Assassin's Quest. Let's say it's a quest to start an earthquake. Well, the next trilogy starts with a reference to an earthquake, right? So you know if the quest has been successful or not, right? So that happens in every series. There are some spoilers about the big events, but there are no spoilers about the characters or the more finer plot details. So bear that in mind as well. The second warning I've got for you is that the final book, which is Assassin's Fate, that's kind of like an Avengers Endgame event. So everything comes together and it's bloody epic and mind-blowing and brilliant and amazing. It's a very good book. So for that reason alone, I recommend reading the series in chronological order because the payoff in the final book is very rewarding. There we go. So you can start with Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first of the Fitz novels, or you can start with Ship of Magic. Now, because of this unusual structure, I have to do this again. The Live Ship trilogy is about a town of traders who use living ships. So they get magic wood from the mysterious rain wilds, and when 3 generations of the same family die on board that ship, the ship absorbs their personalities and their blood and comes alive. So the living ships are faster, safer, and unsinkable. So they're very profitable for these families. Now, the Vestrit family has a ship that's almost about to come to life, and young Althea is set to inherit her birthright. However, her scheming brother-in-law Kyle steals the rights to the ships so that he can engage in the more profitable slave trade. So Althea begins her quest to reclaim her birthright and stop a human travesty from continuing. Oh, it's so good too. Now, this series has some of the deepest character work I've ever seen. There's not a huge cast of characters like you might expect from a book series this big. Instead, you get a small number of characters that you know very well. There is a select few that have intimacy. They start feeling like real people more than just two-dimensional characters, right? The real treat is seeing Fitz living inside of his perspective during 3 different major phases of his life. So we see him in the first trilogy as a child and teenager, and these are more coming-of-age stories. The next trilogy is him in his 30s, and then again 50s and 60s. So it's particularly brilliant when he starts facing similar choices at different stages of his life. And at each stage, he makes a different choice that represents the growth he's made by that point. So that's also fantastic. What we also really need to talk about is the Fool. So the Farseer family have a court jester who's simply known as the Fool. And the Fool is, well, he's the ultimate example of that crazy, funny, silly side character who ends up being wiser than them all. So the Fool was, for example, he's the inspiration for Brandon Sanderson's Wit, or Hoyd, if you like. That sort of untrustable enigma character with the plethora of mysteries behind him. Robin Hobb is also the queen of character arcs. Oof. So several times in the series, my most hated character ended up becoming my most beloved. And sometimes even the characters I loved at the start, well, they ended up becoming the ones I hated the most by the end. So that's known as reverse character arcs, for if you want to be technical, so like Anakin, for example. The Live Ship Traders is a particularly good example of those arcs that sometimes swap characters around. These are done with such finesse and expertise and subtlety. It really proves that Robin Hobb is a master of her craft, or mistress of her craft. Yeah, that sounds much better. All right, let's do that. But speaking of arcs, this is my favorite aspect of the whole series. I have to be extremely careful to avoid spoilers here, but I've got to talk about it. Fitz has the best arc of all. Like, seriously, Fitz is... Calm down. Fitz has the best character arc of all. Specifically, Fitz is faced with a very similar choice in each of his trilogies. And he actually makes a kind of almost a different decision every time. Now, that's as much as I'm going to say about it, but those decisions perfectly reflect who he is at that point in his life, and also reflect on who he has been in the past and where he's come to. There is such a literary symmetry to it that it blows my mind, and I find myself thinking about those choices all the time, and just how goddamn perfect it was. Shh, that's enough. But continuing on with characters, there are some truly brilliant villains in this series. So you'll find most of the villains are chauvinistic men. That tends to be a very common theme. They're very, sexist, or there are slavers or spoilt royal brats. And there's a real complexity and depth to these villains as well. But be warned, you will hate these villains. Like, you will hate them intensely. Like, we're talking more than Joffrey. That much. Hatred's a pretty strong emotion, so, that it's evocative, it'll get you engaged, but, oof, there are times when you just want them to die. Well, I did. But I'm normal. As I warned, I'm showing my bias for this series, right? I do love these books, and I am sort of gushing about it, but to put it in perspective a little bit, there are some major downsides to it. So many of these books are long. They're really long. And there are times when Robin Hobb dedicates so much of the page to advancing their characters. And it's brilliant character work, but there are times you just wanted to get to the next step in the process, you know? So that can be a downside to it as well. It's excellent character work, but it does draw things out a little bit. Okay, so there's a bit more objective viewpoint for you there. Something else I should probably mention, in my opinion, I didn't think that the first trilogy showed her best character work. It was good character work, definitely like above average, but it didn't have that je ne sais quoi of the later series, that sort of mastery of it that she's known for later on. So it just lacks that richness. There we go. I was unbiased. You happy now?
I'm so sorry, my queen. Please forgive me.
Now, before I talk about plot lines, there's something else very special I need to discuss with you about this series. The realm of the Elderlings is a realm of secrets. So sometimes I've heard people criticize the realm of the Elderlings for having relatively simple world building. I mean, there aren't the detailed histories of the Lord of the Rings, or the complex geopolitical landscape of Roshar, and there's not the frickin' labyrinth of complexity that is Malazan. So wait, the Talana mass persecuted the Jaggets? But the Jaggets were the tyrants. And why are there floating castles filled with evil dinosaurs? How does that even make sense? But no, the realm of the Elderlings is not focused on complex world building. It's focused on secrets. I put a lot of thought into it, and really this is the term that separates this series from every other series of its size. The secrets of it. So, for example, in the first book, Fitz sees a painting on the wall that depicts a scaly creature, and it's simply labeled as an Elderling. And we don't know, what is an Elderling? What happened to them? Why are there no Elderlings now? So many forms of magic were lost when the Elderlings disappeared. And the reason why? It's a rather complex puzzle. And it's a brilliant mystery of who done it that's actually slowly pieced together over the course of the full series. And this mystery does have several major revelations, often at the end of each trilogy. So it's not like Lost, where it just constantly strings you along with more mysteries. Okay, there are satisfying resolutions throughout. But Robin Hobb really balances the line of giving you revelations and leaving you wanting more. That's actually one of the things that drives you to want to consume the whole series, to figure out what happened in the past. Why is the world the way it currently is? It's very enjoyable. Also, this makes for a tremendously satisfying finale. So in Assassin's Fate, every last secret is finally revealed. And it's just so, so good. Now, plotlines. So the Fitz novels are all from the first-person mode, so it's kind of written as if he is writing his biography at a much later time in life. They focus on the threats to the Farseer throne, both foreign and domestic, all seen through the eyes of the secret royal assassin living in the shadows, who is both family to the throne line and an outsider. You get lots of evil plots and questioning loyalties and searching for lost magics. Plus, the stories all look at the phase of life that Fitz is in. So the first deals with coming of age, the next deals with adulthood, and the final is late to middle age, often when you feel like death is approaching and you wonder the meaning of your life. It's quite profound at every step. The two series, on the other hand, set in Bingtown, have more of an ensemble of characters, right? So they each have three main protagonists, and then a slew of supporting characters that all get their own personality. So these novels often have multiple plot lines that will weave apart and then come together with quite a clash. I really should also mention, these stories, they really are trilogies, in that sense that the first book does a lot of setup, the second book does a lot of progressing, and the third book has that shocking revelation. So this means that a lot of the brilliant plot lines that you see at the beginning, they might not seem relevant. It might actually kind of be frustrating or even boring. There we go. See, I was unbiased again. Woo! But it's all worth it. And in my opinion, the final novel of each trilogy was always my favorite, because it had that bam, where you realize that it was all part of a setup. Every time. Now let's talk about pacing. As I said earlier, these are long novels, right? Lots of deep character work, and there are times when the plot feels like it might be moving slowly. There's not a lot of intense action scenes spread out to keep you interested, and that's okay because when the action scenes come, of course, they're fantastic, right? I don't like that myth that women can't write action scenes because it's problematic, but it's also not true. You'll also find that a lot of female authors just don't need action scenes to make their stories interesting, right? But anyway, that's enough of that. But that is honestly the biggest negative I can give about the series. There are several books when you kind of wish they were 100 or 200 pages shorter. Even though everything there is good, you just kind of wish it moved a bit quicker because you want to get to the end. You want to find out that mystery, right? I've particularly found Ship of Destiny to be almost agonizing because I just wanted to know. So keep that in mind. The length can be a challenge, but it is a challenge worth sticking with.
That's what she said.
Now, as always, I want to talk about representation because it's always relevant. Now, I'll tell you right now, The Realm of the Elderlings just about scores a 10 out of 10 for representation. It's really good at it. So there is a perfect blend of male and female characters, which is always a win. A number of the books are female-led as well. Rob and Hobb writes them beautifully. So seriously, if you're an aspiring writer and you're struggling to make your female characters, realistic, read this. Seriously, slam dunk, easy solve. Read this. This is how you write women, okay? But we also get people from all classes and walks of life. So we get royal families contrasted with those who are servants or living in poverty. We get a lot of characters with disabilities, both physical and mental. In fact, you would say that physical disabilities is a major theme of the fourth series, the Rain Wild quadrilogy. There's also a gender-fluid character who magically alters their appearance entirely. There are even several heartfelt conversations about their gender fluidity as well. So it's done with delicacy and tact and the uttermost empathy. Perhaps this is the time to talk about the theme of family. You see, Fitz is a bastard child, but he ends up finding a family of a different type. This happens constantly throughout the series, especially with children. And again, I've really got to talk about this, even though it's kind of spoiler territory. And I do apologize, but you see, Fitz ends up becoming a parent in many different ways. He actually has multiple different parental roles. So yes, there is biological parentage that he's involved in, but he's also a foster parent and an adoptive parent and a stepfather as well. And, of course, a mentor figure to several other characters. So I just love this. Too often society thinks children only matter if they're directly connected to us. And I just love that this series shows how many different roles a person can have in raising and loving children. I mean, it takes a village, and it's just so damn beautiful. It's one of my favorite aspects of Fitz growing up, the way that he was a bastard living alone and learnt to pass on and give the love and parentage that he wasn't able to get. Just, my heart. My emotions. Wait, I have to be unbiased. The character who has mental disabilities, he's a bit stereotypical sometimes. Yep, there we go. I was unbiased again. Oh yeah, I'm nailing this. Fun fact, the average novel has a readability of grade 7, as in school grades, and that's because novels are meant to be simple and entertaining. You don't want a PhD level novel because it's too much work, right? Realm of the Elderlings actually has a relatively low reading level of grade 5. Now, this genuinely shocked me when I realized this, because I remember reading the series and constantly thinking, this is such a beautiful prose, and it's even a little bit chewy sometimes. But upon a bit of a closer analysis of it, I realized that her prose actually has a constantly changing meter, and that's why it feels a bit more poetic. So meter, it means like short sentences, long sentences, and alternating text. So think like a piece of music where the drummer is, just... Yeah, like that. Yeah, you get it. Short version is... Okay, the short version is, it's very readable. It's beautiful, but it's actually deceptively simple. There we go. That's what I meant. There's not a lot of violence in this series or too much gore, but there is a lot of mature themes. So this series tackles some pretty big topics and some pretty big social justice issues as well, actually, if you're into that. And it's done beautifully, but I think it's worth a trigger warning if you're going into this. So there is a brutal look into slavery. There's constant talks about sexism in almost every novel. I mean, almost every villain is chauvinistic to some degree. There are several talks about sexual assault, and there's even one scene where it's actually quite explicitly shown on screen. And I'll just say, in case it's a trigger warning for you, that's in Ship of Destiny, okay? I'll just prepare you there. Now, every time this adult content comes up in the series, it's done in a way that treats it with the respect it needs. So Robin Hobb never uses it flippantly or for entertainment value. It's used in a way that advances the plot, advances the characterization, and is actually handled with tact and dignity. That is just so important. But if that is something that upsets you, remember to go at your own rate. And of course, remember, if any of you are struggling with your mental health, just remember to reach out to someone, either someone who loves you or someone professionally to get help. Okay, don't do it alone. Remember that you are loved, you are beautiful, and you are a gift to this world. And I'm glad you're here. Okay? Now, the ending. Is it worth reading all the way to the end? Look, I think I've made this pretty clear. Yes! Okay. All those secrets I mentioned, so many of them are actually saved till the last novel. I couldn't believe it. The last 100 pages, I was like, revelation, revelation, revelation. It's like reading the last book of the Bible. Hey! So many resolutions and answers, and of course the team up of characters from the different series coming together, the blending of different magics working off each other. We have the ultimate villains right at the end. And we have heartfelt character moments. I need to calm down. I'm feeling lots of feelings right now. Just read the final book. Okay, good, thanks. So how much should you try? Okay, well, Assassin's Apprentice is the first book. It's a good book, but it's not the best book. I would genuinely recommend read the second book as well. If you read The Royal Assassin and you did not enjoy it, okay, then you've had a fair sampling of the best of the work. You can probably move on to something else. That said, if you do go straight to Ship of Magic is a solid beginning, okay? Again, give them a try, and remember, if you don't like it, that's fine. Like, I think you will, but it is long. There's a couple defects to it, right? So try it out, have fun with it, and, if you don't like it, just go read something else. Don't read to impress people. Just step into Robin Hobb's magical realm, and you'll see why this is such a beloved series. Also, fun fact, there's a thing in the book where every time Fitz goes into battle, there's a line that says he puts his hair up into a warrior's tail. And every time I go onto a chat room or a comment section, there's always someone being like, what is a warrior's tail? Guys, it's this. Huh? Yes, I love having long hair. So the warrior's tail, it's the half up, or it's the look that The Witcher or Jon Snow has with the up to the side, or Qui-Gon Jinn, actually. Or you could call it a mullet, but let's not go there, all right? Long hair is the best. Anyway, there's a fun fact for you. So, that's it. That's the realm of the Elderlings. Now, I hope I've enticed you to read it, but if it doesn't sound like it's your style, that's okay. Remember, no one's pressuring you to read. We want to get excited about reading and read for the enjoyment of it alone, okay? So, check out other videos on my channel if you're still looking for a book to read. I've got a couple up so far, but I'm still getting started. I've got so many more I want to get to. So, stick with me, do the YouTube stuff, and like and subscribe. That said, if you want to support the channel, you can buy this shirt, right? How cool is that? So my wife made this shirt. She has an online shop where she does a whole bunch of cool geeky stuff like that. If you support her, you support me. We share a bank account, so links in the description. Just remember we're in Australia, so shipping might be a bit different than what you're used to. So tell me what other series you want to hear me introduce or something you might be considering reading. I'll do a video about it. So treat yourself to a book today, you beautiful rainbow space unicorn. Bye.